everyone. Welcome to another awesome broadcast about the FileMaker platform. This is actually part 2 of the add-on module construction live stream that we did with Kristian Olsen, Art Savea. Did a great job. We kind of broke it into 2 pieces. I think when they actually did the broadcast, everyone took a quick break and got a drink or a coffee or something, and then they kept going. It's a lot to absorb on one pass, so we made it 2 different videos, and so you can break it down if you want or watch it all at one time. So with that, let's dive into part 2 of add-on modules and the FileMaker platform.
So we're going to go ahead and jump into part 2 of this. I think it's a little bit sexier, if you will, of what we have going on. And so again, part 1 is, okay, you have this idea for an add-on. You want to build something. Can it be an add-on, and how do you do it? And so we went over those steps. And frankly, once you know you have something that can be made onto an add-on, these steps actually aren't necessarily that hard. The hardest part, I really think, is the strategy. You've got your add-on, you've got a strategy, you've made it, and now you want to give it either to the community or even just reuse it yourself or maybe share it within your organization. How do you do that? So previous to this, I had a laundry list of demo files, and I would go in and every time I needed to add it, relearn how they work a little bit. I had a checklist of the order in which you port the code over. But everything else out there, generally speaking, the way that you go and you get your stuff inserted into somewhere is you install it. And so one of the things I'm actually quite excited about, what I think Art and I have done in the FileMaker community with add-ons, is made these installers. And we want to chat about how that kind of works now. And one of the conversations that is going to kind of come up with installers is basically, as we showed you, I almost tried to open this up, but this isn't the actual file, is there's a single script step. And again, there's other stuff going on in my installer. There's a lot more going on in Art's. But there's this single script step here that turns it into an add-on. And keep in mind that in your add-on file, everything in there gets moved over. We've showed this in previous videos, and we'll definitely show it today. That means if you have a script with this step in it, and you put that in your add-on, it's going to get brought over. Now, let's follow the course of this. Someone decides to add 3 or 4 add-ons to their file. What ends up happening? They get all these extra installer scripts. Maybe you want to have a cool installer layout or more than one, and all of that gets moved over. And so the conversation of a single file versus a 2-file installer comes up. In my virtual menus demonstration, I showed you how you get a folder, has a practice starting point file in it, it's got the demo file, and then it has an installer separate. That's the reason, if you exclude this practice one, I had both of these. I didn't want the installer to get added into their file. There's a couple tricks around this. One of the people at Geist, they suggested having a single script step. And then you just have it on one of the layouts, maybe on a button that doesn't necessarily get brought over. So you can conceal it, but it's something that you want to put some thought into. The other thing that you can do is have the multi-file, or I think what Art has done is actually really cool on this. So Art, I'm going to jump to you in a moment on that. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything on my list. Yeah, so the last thing I want to do before I kind of give Art a chance to jump in on this. So Art, if you're on our list, we're going to kind of talk about the process of what is needed. So if we go back to that script step, I mentioned 2 things in there. One of them was the UUID, and the other one is that you basically have to have a file or layout name, okay? Or you have to have a file name, and the way that you do that is by getting the window name. So if you have an installer, you're going to need to open the demo file. So let's go ahead and just walk through my installer here for a moment, because it's actually a little bit more simple, if you will, than Art's. So the first thing is I basically have a variable called virtual menus. Virtual menus is the name of this FMP12 file right here. The next thing that I have is a path, and basically I've got a somewhat dynamic thing. As long as you keep it in the same folder, it can find that file. The second thing that happens is we go and we open that. Okay, so we're going to open the package, and the package is basically that file. And this next part we can more or less ignore. In the source file, I have some stuff happen when you run the installer. There is some records and whatnot that I actually want wiped out. So I go into that file and I wipe them out. This thing thinks it doesn't know what it is, but the script establishes the relationship through these steps right here. That's why it gives me that error every time I open it up. Then we go ahead and save the copy. I check for some errors, and then we close the demo file. That is virtual menus, and then we tell the user some stuff of what's going on. But essentially, hey, here's where the add-on is. Open it, package it, install it, close everything down. That's the steps that I take. And Art does this in a slightly different way that, frankly, I think he's improved the process. Once it opens, one of the things, and Art kind of mentioned this earlier, is that other files outside of FileMaker, they get created, and you're going to want to edit those. Okay? These are XML, JSON, very boring files. I was a little, again, I think I'm really proud of the process that we've come up with this here at RCC as far as how to install it, or at least what I'm seeing so far out there. I'm not saying we're the only ones that have installers, but at DevCon, the way that this was shown by even Todd Geis is, hey, after you install it, just go to the library folder and replace the JSON files with these ones, and then you'll get your icon and text. And I don't know that that is the best way to do it. So this is the opportunity you have to change your icon. This is where you kind of really get to format the file. But let me do this. Rather than me continuing to talk here, Art, I want to have you step in for a moment and have walk people through your install. Would you be able to do that right now?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Real quick, actually, Art, I want to answer one question here, and I can even give you the opportunity to answer it. Michael in YouTube is saying, hey, yesterday in Engage, they said that you need FileMaker 19 to install the add-on, but that the functionality could be available to FileMaker 18 users as well. How do you activate that functionality in FileMaker 18? Do you want to answer that, or you want me to answer that?
That is a great question, and the answer to that is you need FileMaker Pro 19 on Windows or Mac to install the add-on, but once the add-on is there and set up correctly, as long as the add-on itself doesn't use any features that are not available to whatever version of FileMaker you're using, you can use the add-on. So once it's in the file, it's essentially a part of the file. It has its own layouts, it has its own scripts, its own table, and it functions as part of the file. So if you install it and add it with 19, so that's the requirement there, you can use it on 18, 17, 16, as long as the add-on scripts and functionality are compatible with that version.
Really good answer, Art. And basically the short answer, Mikkel, is that the package add-on step that we just showed is only available in 19. But as Art said, once it's packaged and you install it, as long as those features are available in the previous version, you can use it in as old of a version as it has. Now, if you have a while loop, keep in mind it's only going to go back as old as 18 for that reason, different limitations.
Right.
But Art, take it over.
All right, so here we go. We have our installer file here. So if you were in the live stream that I did a couple weeks ago, this looks a little bit nicer than what we were showing off back then. So just a kind of a redesign of the initial screen. But essentially the idea here is to have a file that is presentable and just looks nice so that you can distribute it and makes it a little bit easier for the user to actually install your add-on. So what this does is it gives you a demo of the add-on. So if we launch the demo, we have our little demo here. And then the export add-on package, if you want to actually look at the add-on package yourself and look at the code, then we have that option there as well. And then this right here is the main process for this whole add-on installation. So if we go into the scripts, I can actually show you how this will work. And largely the process is the same as what Kristian showed you, but as you can probably already see, my script is a little bit more involved than his is. Mine has some checks on here to make sure that we're actually running it on the appropriate platform. So if you try to run this in WebDirect or on an iPad or tablet, basically anything that's not a Mac computer or a Windows machine running Pro, this script won't run. And then also if you're not running at least 19, the script won't run. Then what we do, so kind of guiding the user through the installation process, we kind of have some dialogues here to actually tell the user what's going on. So actually, why don't I run the script, and then we'll walk through the specifics there. So I'm going to go ahead and install add-on here, and then we'll just watch what the installer actually does. So again, here's that prompt. In order to install the add-on, the file must be opened first. We'll go ahead and attempt to open the file first. So like Kristian said, the script step, the save as add-on package, it takes a window name, and then what it does is it selects that window, and then the rest of the process goes through. It creates all the XML and what it needs for the add-on package. So again, we're just warning them that it needs to be open. So what will happen is the add-on package will open up on the right over here. And in the add-on package, I actually have a little screen that comes up for that window. That is kind of a personal choice. Obviously, you don't have to really show anything on the screen. You can just have it go and install the add-on and then have a dialog that comes up in your installer. But I wanted something a little visual here for that. So when we hit OK, there is the add-on, and then it goes away. And then so now, once it's all done, we get a little dialog here saying that the add-on has been installed, and please restart FileMaker so the changes can be applied. And then we have a little timer that's basically giving you 60 seconds to quit or cancel, or it's going to quit on its own, or you can quit now. And the reason why we have to quit FileMaker at this point is because the changes that we make to the metadata, to those JSON files that Kristian mentioned, they don't show up in the gallery unless you quit FileMaker. So if I were to come in without quitting FileMaker, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So I've already got mine in the add-on here. But if you see over here, the category for the add-on, it's just blank, it's the default. And then over here, we have my preview because it loads in the preview after I replaced it. We'll go through that in the script here in a second. And then we have the title, which is just use the default title of the window. And then we have all the description and everything else missing. And it says it was created by Claris, which we know it wasn't. So we're going to go ahead and cancel out of here. And I'm going to quit FileMaker, and I'm going to open it again. And we're going to look at the add-on gallery and see what we have there. So before I open up FileMaker Pro again, when you run that save a copy as an add-on package script step, this window comes up automatically. It does not, it doesn't give us an option to close this. It just comes up automatically. So if you have a couple of monitors, it might come up on your right screen, it might come up on your main one. It just comes up automatically, and there's no way for us to disable that at this point. So just be aware that that window will also come up somewhere on your screen, but you can just close that. You don't necessarily need to worry about this. This is the XML files, the JSON files for the localizations, the icon, and the preview icon. This stuff you won't really need to worry about too much. So now let's go back and open up FileMaker Pro, and we'll go back into the installer and into the add-on gallery, and we'll actually take a look at what it looks like now. All right, so if we go back into layout mode here, so I already had one in here that I installed, so this is part of the demo. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But now you can see the category is now utility, and now we have the actual name that I wanted it to display, the version, and my description. It now says created by Richard Carlton Consulting Inc. And then it also gives me a list of all the tables, layout scripts, and everything else. And if you actually click this link, this will actually take you to our website. So on my other page, it went over to our website. And then you install it by hitting choose. So
Now,
FileMaker, how do I
Art
fix
makes
this?
all that look really simple, but I really think this is one of the coolest things he's done because though I've seen some really snazzy add-ons out there, I have yet to see anyone in the community make an installer like Art that actually comes and replaces all of those things and makes it so seamless to be able to add this on like any professional installer out there. But Art, you're so soft-spoken, you make it seem like no big deal that you just kind of changed the JSON files, added your icon, put a link in there. But really, it's some pretty cool stuff.
Right, and part of the other thing with that was the the lack of documentation on some of this. So part of it was figuring it out on my own and experimenting with the script and trying to get the metadata set in a way that this would actually display correctly. So again, Kristian says that makes it look easy, but if we go into the script now and see what actually happens to make that happen, it's not quite so easy, and you might see why I kind of struggle with it for a bit. And this is just part of our file opening. Okay, so if we come back into the script here, say file is add-on, there's our first dialog that tells us that if we want to install the add-on, we have to open the file first. We're going to go ahead and open it. And then this is the part where we actually go and try to open the file. So there's actually a bit of the process here that actually exports the file. So the file itself.
Yeah, real quick, Art, I don't know if we showed people this. So I mentioned that you want to do a one file versus two file. Did you show everyone that your installer is a single file, but it's not really a single file?
Yes, so that's where I was going here next. So behind the scenes, this is kind of behind the curtain of the installer. So this is actually how I would go in and set it up. And this can actually be used for other add-ons. You just have to fill it out for the appropriate information for your add-on. The add-on itself, so the add-on is a .fmp12 FileMaker file, and the add-on is actually being stored in this container in the installer. So the add-on is pretty much self-contained. Like I said, there is one layout in there that gets displayed when it gets opened. But the idea behind this was to make this file as lightweight as possible, meaning having the fewest number of scripts and layouts so that when you actually add it into your file, you don't end up with these superfluous layouts or scripts or things that you don't need in your file that were just there to help the installation process. So as an example, if we go back over here to Script Workspace, because I actually use the add-on process to add the demo to this installer, here are the scripts that get copied over from the add-on, from the actual signature capture add-on, and I just name them in a way that is just very generic and just kind of tells you what they do by looking at them. But that's pretty much all that gets brought over, except for these two scripts. I'm still kind of working on a way to get around having these in the file, but these are actually in the add-on file. And actually, let me open the actual add-on file. So if we look at the add-on file itself, this is the add-on file itself. So this is what I'm actually storing in the container here. So back here, this is that little window that comes up during the installation process. And then the rest of these, this is the template layout that we talked about early on in the first part that actually has the object that comes in with the add-on. So here's my add-on object on our template layout, and then it has that add-on name, and then the special character or special string here for the UUID. So I have all of that in this file, and then I do have some other files that also get brought over as part of the installation process, and I've named them appropriately. So this kind of gets back to that, consider how your add-on is going to be, or where it's going to actually be included or where it's going to be added. When you actually name your scripts and your not your variables, but your field names and your tables, all of that gets brought in exactly the way it is in your add-on file. So you generally want to name these in a way that's going to be obvious as to what they do. And then if there's any layouts or anything that can't be renamed or shouldn't be deleted or anything like that, you can add that to the name as well. So for mine, I have, do not delete. And then these ones in this folder, you can actually delete post installation.
And Art, I don't know if people can see it from the screen, but do you put all of your layouts and your scripts into a single folder so that when they're installed, there's a single place to go find all that stuff?
Yes, so that's this folder right here, this RCC.js signature capture, and actually this is in the installer. Let me show you in the actual add-on. So this is the folder right here. So in the add-on file itself, this is the folder that gets brought over. These are the actual scripts that are used in the add-on. This one is only used during the installation process, so that's why I put these in a folder that say can delete post-installation. So if you don't want to have these serve no purpose other than during the installation process. And even that seems a little extra to me. And like I said, I'm trying to work around that and not even have those be involved.
And just in case this isn't obvious to people, so Art, go ahead and close the main menu there, or the main folder. No, you can keep script workspace open, just close that main folder. So normally when you make a file, you're not going to put all of your scripts into a folder. But again, the thought process you always need to have on this is what's the endpoint. So because the add-on is going to move all of Art's scripts over to that file, by putting them in this folder, it's really nice because at that endpoint, they're already in there organized. So just in case that's not real clear to people, that's the reason I'd kind of asked Art that and why you might want to do that in your own add-on so that when it gets dumped in the target file, you don't just have 10 scripts all sitting there together, even if they're correctly named. And then Art, did you do something similar for the layouts as well?
Yes, so the layouts, this template layout doesn't show up in the layout list. So when you go to manage layouts after you've added an add-on, this one does not show up. This one is either hidden or just not actually a layout. That I actually haven't figured out yet. I believe it just brings in the XML objects from the layout and then stores them in that add-on sidebar when you're in layout mode. So this one doesn't actually show up in there, but these do. So layouts, I did the same exact thing as I did with the script. So do not delete if I don't want them to delete these, because these are actually, well, this is the actual canvas. The add-on uses this to draw the signature. And then this is all the JavaScript code under the hood to look at it. You could technically delete this, but you shouldn't. And then this one, obviously, you can delete. You don't have to, but I kind of bolded it just to draw attention to it that, hey, if you don't want this extra layout in your file, you can delete it. So layouts are same thing, folder and folder here with the layouts. And then also another thing to consider is where it shows up on the relationship graph. So this isn't a great example because I actually haven't done this yet in here. But what you might want to do is you might want to put like a note or something that says, you know, RCC.js signature capture from RCC, or these are the tables for the add-on. So if you group these up in a specific way, that's how they're going to show up in the target file.
Not just that that's how they'll show up, that's actually where they get placed. So anytime you make a new table TO, it always by default gets placed in the upper left-hand corner. So if Art were for some reason to drag his little TO to the middle of the screen in the managed database as an add-on, that's actually where FileMaker will place it. So part of what Art is saying, hey, especially with yours is just a single TO, right?
Right.
So having some sort of like a text box around it would probably make it helpful to see. Or Art could add some styling to it. Maybe you want to make that like a hot pink or something.
Right, something to differentiate it, but just keep in mind that wherever you have this placed and however you have it styled, that's how it's going to come over in the target file. So that's the add-on itself. So again, the goal here with the installer is to keep the add-on itself as lightweight as possible. So we'll get out of here and we can close this file now. And then actually just to kind of show you a little bit more behind the curtain. So this is what the signature canvas looks like. So it's really small so that it can actually be expanded to any size that you want. And then we have the under the hood, which actually has all of the JavaScript code and whatnot for the add-on. All right, so that's the add-on itself. Let's come back over here to the installer and continue on with the script. So like I said, we export the file. And so what it'll do is if you actually use that preview button So if you actually exported it and you wanted to look at the file, so that's essentially what that button does, is it just exports a copy of the file so that you can actually open it up like this and looking at it specifically before you install it. So if you actually hit that button, the installer actually will keep track of where you exported it to, because it'll actually ask you. So if you hit this button, it'll say, hey, where do you want to save it? And then it'll keep track of that. If you didn't move it, it'll use that copy. If you did move it, it'll basically export another copy to the desktop, and then it will open it. So right here, so this is where it goes and tries to open the file once it's exported it. And then we do some error checking. And then this right here is actually one of those scripts that I mentioned that are for the installation process specifically. So what it does is it calls the external script from the add-on file, and then I pass it some parameters. So these parameters are for positioning and for the window title. So the save add-on script step actually takes a window name as the parameter, so it knows what to grab to save it as an add-on package. So in order for this to be more dynamic and reusable, I made this installer so that you can actually set it in the configuration here. So over here, I have a little field called window title, and you have to set this. And when you set this, that's what the window title will get set to when the add-on file itself opens. So we call that, we open the file, and then we just make sure that the file opens up correctly, and then we run our save a copy as add-on package script step. And so because we know that the window name is going to be what we set it here in that field, title window, we're going to go ahead and pass that to the save a copy as add-on package script step. And then we have that option, replace UUIDs. Then we just check to make sure that we didn't get any errors back. And so once we pass that, we didn't get any errors, we're going to go ahead and perform the close file script in the add-on file, which is this one right here. And that, again, just does what it says, closes the file. Pause again just to make sure everything gets refreshed, and then we clean up after ourselves. We'll delete that file so it's not just sitting there, because you might forget to delete it or whatnot. If you want to save it again, you'll be able to export it if you want to look at it again by itself. So now we start getting into the metadata. So that part is the installation where it puts it in the add-on modules folder. So add-on modules folder that Kristian showed you a bit ago. This is where the actual add-on gets installed. So with all the XML, JSON files, and icons. So that's that first part. Now, when you actually run the save a copy as add-on package, as you can tell, we only have two parameters that we can pass it. There's no title, there's no description, there's no features, there's no website, there's no other parameter that I can pass it so that it can write the metadata for me. So what we end up having to do is we have to replace the default files that FileMaker writes as part of this script step. So after we run that script step, these files, so it comes up with the generic icon, it comes up with generic JSON, it comes up with just generic files, which actually have that information. If you recall when I showed what the gallery looks like before restarting FileMaker, how it just had the blank category, no description, it still had Claris as the URL. That is their default information, their default data that they write into those files as part of this script step. So what we do down here is we replace it. So we go ahead and we actually create our own JSON so there's two JSON files, and I'm just going to go over those briefly. I won't go too much into detail on those, but there's two main ones. There's one that's info.json, and then there's one info underscore whatever your localization is. So the info is like the global info. Like, it doesn't matter what language, this is just the basic information. So this is where we have who it's by, what clients it's supported on, this GUID. I won't get too much into that right now, but that's actually fairly important, and that's actually something that I reset in the script. And then icon color, that's just a shading, and then the URL, which is the URL that takes you to the website for the add-on author. And then the localized JSONs, those are the ones that actually have the language-specific text. So, you know, the category would be in whatever language, your description would be translated. All of this would be translated into whatever localization you're aiming for. So those are the JSON files, and then we also have our icons. So we have the icon.png and the icon at 2x.png, and then the preview icon. So all of those, like I said, with the save add-on or save a copy as add-on package script step, those are defaulted to whatever FileMaker's defaults are. There's no way to pass that information during that step. So down here, we actually start to replace those. So we actually grab the path where those files are stored. So based on whether on Windows or a Mac, we actually grab the add-on modules folder, and then we create our info JSON path, and here is where we replace that GUID that I mentioned here. That is actually part of the what the gallery uses to differentiate between add-on versions. So if you go through your process and you install the add-on again, this part of the script ensures that in the add-on gallery, you're going to see two versions of your add-on. And that's the only thing that we change as far as that goes. Then what we do is we check to see if the default one is already there. If it is, then we go ahead and delete it. Then what we do is we actually export our own file. So FileMaker doesn't allow or doesn't give us a way to create this specific JSON file in FileMaker. So there's a specific format and encoding that these JSON files use that FileMaker script workspace just doesn't support. So to get around that, you either have to download a blank file remotely or have one stored in the installer. So I have one stored in the installer, and I export it.
So hang on, Art. So you're deleting the source, the JSON file that gets created through the package, but you've got your own handy built into your installer, and you just inject that into the hidden library.
Exactly. Yes, with our information.
Very cool.
So, and that's actually these next few steps here is actually opening that data file once we export it. And then once we export it, then we write our JSON. So for this first part, this is the info JSON, the global one, which is this bit of JSON right here. So this we actually write to the file. And then we basically go down the same line of steps for the localization files. So those ones with the localization code at the end, the dot or the underscore EN, DE, ES, and so on and so forth. This next part actually goes through my localization support. So let's actually walk through that here.
And real quick, Art, because it might not be as obvious as some people. You just said that you delete the JSON file and then you save the one there, but then you're writing to that file. Do you want to maybe elaborate on why the JSON file that you save needs to be written to afterwards? Why doesn't it just already have the JSON you need in it?
For this one in particular, it does need to be set dynamically in this way because of this GUID. This GUID gets set dynamically every time the script is run. And so for this part, that is crucial. But technically for the localizations down here, you could just throw in your own already preset JSON file and just export that out. But I actually go through the same process where I replace it because I actually go through a separate process for these localizations. So if you can see here, I actually support a couple different ones. So if you see, I went over to Spanish, and now the title's in Spanish, the category's in Spanish, description's in Spanish. So I did it using a related table for localizations, and I generate that JSON dynamically. And so this part of the script actually loops through those related records and creates each of the localized JSON files for whichever ones you have. So if you have an English one, a Spanish one, and a French one, it'll actually go through and replace those. So right now for mine, I actually have it for French. So if I were to change my computer into, or change my region to France and my language to French, and I were to go into the add-on gallery, I would see everything in French like this because I've provided this French localization file.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Art, but isn't part of the reason you do this that you almost create a vessel so that your installer can write whatever you need to it, meaning that you could use this installer for a whole slew of different files because those JSON files aren't really specific to this add-on so much as the text that you've put into that installer file. Is that correct?
Right. And so the other thing, the other reason for that is technically this file, like if I wanted to, I could add a new record here. And I can add a new add-on. I can actually bundle add-ons into one single installer and that support multiple localizations in this installer file. And part of the reason for that is because we dynamically generate the information that we need based on what you've entered over here on the left.
And so you'd still be using those empty JSON files. The JSON files are almost just, again, they're like empty containers, so you can put you inject your code into them.
Exactly. So
Cool.
So that's actually what these two steps are right here. So read from data files, just so we get the blank information, we store it into a variable. And actually this step probably isn't entirely necessary, but the main step here is writing to the data file. So these two steps, actually these 4 steps, get file exists, open data file, read from data file, write to data file, those were introduced with 18. And they basically let you manipulate, and the delete file here as well. They let you manipulate your file system. So we get the path to the JSON, we delete it, we export it back to that same spot, we open it, we read from it, and then we write our new JSON into it. And then down here for the localizations, like I said, it basically goes through the same process, except if you have more than one, it loops through and it does the same thing. So these are the localizations that get exported, and we're still using that same empty JSON file. And then past the JSON files, now we're getting into the icons. So the only one that we have to set ourselves is the preview. The other icons, so the little pencil, or little pen here, that icon is actually set in the file itself. So if I'm going to go back and open up my add-on file here. Okay, so we're going to come back over here. So this icon right here that shows up in the sidebar, that icon is actually set from your file options in your add-on file. So if you go there into file options, file options, and then over here to icon, that's the icon that gets used by default. But for the preview you actually have to set yourself, because by default, the preview icon also gets set to that icon. So if I hadn't modified the preview, that preview would show this same icon. But because I wanted my preview to actually show a preview of my add-on instead of that same little icon there, I modified it. And so now that's what shows up here. So that's the next part of the script here, which is basically, I mean, it's almost doing the same thing as the JSON, except we don't have to replace with the blank JSON or anything like that. All we do is we just delete the preview file that's there, the preview, and it's a PNG file. The icons are PNG files. We delete the one that's already there, and then we export our preview file there, and then that's pretty much it. And then all we do here is we just wrap up, clean up after ourselves, close all the open data files that we opened. And then this is where the dialog at the end comes up at the end to tell you, hey, we've successfully installed the add-on. Please restart FileMaker to apply the changes. And then you have 60 seconds to quit or you have 60 seconds to cancel. Otherwise, it'll just automatically quit for you. But that is essentially the process that I've developed for what we have right now as far as add-ons go. And again, it is nicer to be able to just distribute a file and just say, hey, just click this button, install add-on, and just have most everything already be put in place for you.
On that point, Art, Alejandro in YouTube was bringing up, before add-ons, you could import the tables and the scripts and the layouts. But even he says, but this is way more convenient. Do you want to speak to the level of convenience on this versus the previous method? I know with your specific add-on, there might not be a lot there, but how much easier do you find this to be versus some of the previous methods for like demo files?
I would say it's a lot easier because once you've done it once, or FileMaker is basically handling the copy and paste for you. So if any of you have ever gone through the process of moving over a module or something from one file to another, it's not necessarily complicated. It's more so tedious than anything, tedious and time consuming, because you have to go in a specific order. You have to copy custom functions, tables, layouts. You have to do it all in a specific order. Otherwise, if you don't do it in a specific order, then things break and you have to go and fix them after you've copied them over. And it's a massive headache. So even just for the simplicity of being able to move things over from file to file, I mean, add-ons are huge in that regard.
Yeah, and I agree with Alejandro on this. You could do it before. There's a demo file I've used a lot. I think Richard showed this in a stream. It's called Beautiful Menus. I sometimes think of it as hidden menus. It basically lets a slide panel show up or hide to give this concealed effect of this menu coming from off screen. And I've used this dozens of times for customers. And yeah, and it's not the worst thing in the world, but 9 times out of 10, when I move that demo file for someone, I forget to do the custom functions before I do the scripts, and then my scripts don't work, and I have to delete the scripts and then bring the custom functions over and then do the scripts. And it's just because I've done that one so many times, I don't pull up my checklist. And like Art said, if you don't do it in the right order, then things break. But even that simple demo file, if I had it as an add-on, it would be so wonderful, because the add-on, once someone like Art or myself has dumped the time into it, such an easy way to kind of install that in there. Ken Tooley has a question here, Art, and I'm more than happy to have you answer this. And I want you to continue here too. But he wants to know if Nick Hunter's Launchpad would be a candidate as an add-on. I definitely have an answer on this, but do you want to try to answer Ken there? Ken's one of our regulars in Discord.
I mean, my initial response to that would just be it would be complicated, and I would need to look into it a little bit more. I would say certain aspects of it could probably be made as add-ons, because I'm actually considering pulling a couple of things out of it that I've actually expanded on myself already and potentially turning them into add-ons. So it's something that I've thought about myself as well, because there are a lot of good bits of code in Nick Hunter's Launchpad, namely the user system and the login system, which is part of what I'm trying to get into an add-on, like where you can just drop in a users table and have a whole set of privileges and whatnot related to that in a login screen and whatnot. So I would say that there's pieces in there that could probably qualify for an add-on, but Launchpad as a whole, no, I think that's too complicated.
Yeah, and you actually went, I didn't even think about it until you said it there. I was going to be more blunt. No, Launchpad to me is almost more like a starting point. It's the file I would start with and add stuff to it. However, whenever I talk to Nick about Launchpad, he has walked back to me exactly how he intended it to initially be used, and it's more of a tool that is full of a bunch of cool tricks. And so right. I think what Art said there, and actually Ken followed up to and said it, is rather than Launchpad itself being an add-on, Launchpad could be chopped up and put into, hopefully put into smaller pieces that could themselves be an add-on. And in fact, and Nick has said this on a number of streams. We've said it in conversations back and forth. He doesn't necessarily think these whole add-ons are going to blow up. However, he by all means is intending to start using them potentially for himself, because he could easily add these things to clients. Like Art, I imagine down the road you could show someone this JS signature and have them go, oh, I'd love for you to add that to my file, and that'd be a great tool for you to have, whether or not it's on any sort of marketplace out there.
Right, and that's pretty much how it started, was more so a personal tool or a tool for even just one of my specific clients. But having expanded on it and just kind of realizing that, hey, this could actually be turned into something more useful. That's kind of what that thought process was. It wasn't so much that I set out to build an add-on like, hey, what's a good idea for an add-on? It was more so that I just had something else that I was working on and said, hey, this would actually be great as an add-on.
And you did an outstanding job on it, even though it doesn't work on Windows yet.
Still trying. We'll see if we can get that working here, but to be determined, or to be announced, I guess, right now.
Well, I definitely interrupted you there. Did you want to continue with what you were kind of going there? Because you showed us a good installer process. It would be nice, I know we've done it in previous videos, to kind of bring the pieces together of how do you then take that installer and like really integrate into a file and talk about, you know, how the template, what did you call it? The layout template is kind of that drag and drop element.
Yeah, let me pull up my file here my demo file here. It's just a copy of Starting Point. I've used it before, but we'll go through this installation process here, and actually kind of give you a little bonus little tip here as well, because I believe it partially came up a little earlier in the conversation, but we didn't really touch on it. But in uninstalling an add-on, once it's already been added, so if you see here, I already have my signature capture add-on here. I already even have the button here. If I wanted to get rid of it, this can get complicated depending on how your add-on is set up. Mine, fortunately, because it's not related in any way, it's just its own little table. So we'll go over here into the graph. You see how I just threw it over here on the upper left-hand corner of the graph. Because it's just self-contained, it doesn't relate to anything. It doesn't really affect anything when I remove it. So if I right-click over here on the add-on sidebar over here, if we go and uninstall the add-on, this will essentially attempt to remove everything related to the add-on, including scripts, layouts, tables, relationships, and then as we'll see here, once I actually click on it, it brings up this dialog and it asks you if you want to uninstall, and it has the add-on name there, and are you sure you want to install, and delete it from all layouts based on this table here. So it's only doing it from this context. So depending on your add-on, if you have any relationships or anything, it's going to base it on this context. Since mine is just a single table with no relationships and a handful of scripts, this will actually take everything out pretty easily and relatively quickly. This checkbox here, permanently delete all tables, fields, and record data used by this add-on, this essentially gives you the option to keep everything that you've done in that add-on. So if you've added any records or anything in that add-on's tables, then you have the ability to keep it here. Otherwise, this checkbox will basically delete everything related to the add-on, including that data. Now, I haven't really played with this checkbox myself. I am assuming that is what it does based on the description, but I actually haven't played with it or tested it. I usually have this checkbox set when I'm uninstalling an add-on. So we're going to go ahead and uninstall. And again, depending on the complexity of the add-on and also the complexity of the file that it's in, this can take anywhere between a minute to a few minutes, and also depends on if it's hosted or local. So this shouldn't take too long since mine is a single table and a handful of scripts and a couple of layouts. And it shouldn't take too much longer. This is a hosted file, so it usually takes a minute or two for a hosted file depending on the connection. All right, so it has uninstalled the add-on from this file only. It hasn't uninstalled it from my computer or anywhere else, just this file. So we're going to go ahead and install it, and I'll actually mention the distinction there here in a second. So when I reinstall this, we're going to go ahead and hit the plus button here in the add-on sidebar. I'm going to go down until we find our utility, signature capture. As we can see, here's the icon that we set, and also the preview and the description, link, tables, layouts, and scripts. This is actually generated by FileMaker automatically, and this up here is what we generate in those JSON files. So we're going to go ahead and choose, and when we do this, essentially what's going to happen is FileMaker is going to convert those XML files in the add-on module. So let me bring up that folder again. So essentially what it's going to do is it's going to go to this folder and it's going to translate these XML files that we have here into the layouts and tables and also some of the record data that we have in the add-on. It's going to bring all of that over into regular scripts, layouts, and tables here into the target file. So we'll go ahead and select that here. And again, depending on the complexity of the add-on and the target file, this can take a minute or two or longer, and also depending on if it's hosted or not. All right, so there we go. Now we have this back in the add-on sidebar, and next step is going to be to actually add it to the layout here. So all we're going to do is drag it. And now you can see that we have the button here, and this button and this group is what you set up in that layout template. And when you group it, you name it with that name of the add-on and the special character or special string that then gets here replaced with a UUID. So as you can see here, we have a UUID here now instead of that special string that we had to add in the add-on file. So that whole group gets brought in, but the individual groups within, or the individual objects within that group retain their name. So the button itself is button.start and the label is label.description. So the other thing that you want to consider when building an add-on is when they drag it onto your layout, what are they going to see? What's going to be any additional instructions that you might have, any additional setup that you might have? How are you going to display that? So I've seen one other way of doing this so far, or two other ways of doing this so far. One of them is actually the way that I've done it here, which is just a label that says, hey, go into the script parameters and customize the script signature capture specifically for your database. Now, what does that mean? That means just double clicking this button, going into the script parameters here. You don't need to touch the script, just the script parameters. And that script is what gets brought over as part of the add-on package. So all that XML that I mentioned, it gets converted back into scripts, layouts, and tables. And I'll show you that here in a second. But the post configuration in my particular add-on, the only thing you really need to do is just replace this first parameter in the get field name function with your container that you want to store the signature in. And that's it. And then we can actually delete the label. We don't need that. And as you can see, it still has the group name with the group UUID, and then it still has the individual object name. So we're going to put that up here in the header. And we'll go ahead and save that. Now, the other thing to note here is that because we installed it here in this file, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have installed it in any other files. It's only this file that we have added this add-on to, and so it's the only one that will show in this sidebar. So unless you've actually added this add-on to your solution, it's not going to show up here, even though you have it installed on your computer. So this over here, let's go back over here to the add-on modules. This location is different from this. This is on your computer, giving you the ability to add it from the add-on gallery. So that's where that comes from. And actually, because I already have it in here, it doesn't show it in the gallery anymore. But if we go over here to this other file, you'll see that I actually have another add-on installed in this one. So my signature capture doesn't show up in here, but this add-on doesn't show up in the other version of Starting Point. So as you can see, just because I add it to this file doesn't mean it gets added to any other file. And actually, this add-on is no longer in my add-on modules folder. So as you can see, the only one I have in here is my signature capture. So even if you delete the folder from the add-on modules, effectively removing it from the list or from the add-on gallery, so preventing you from adding it to any future file, it won't remove it from any file you've already added it to because it becomes a part of the file. So if we take a look at this, come back over here to the hosted copy of Starting Point here, with my plugin, we'll go into Manage Scripts or Script Workspace, and then we'll go down here and you'll see that my folder from my add-on has been added here with the scripts that I have. And if I want these 2 scripts in this folder, I can actually delete because I've labeled it as such. And same thing with the table. So if we go over here to tables, you'll see that there is an RCC.js signature capture there added with 1 record. And then if we go over to relationships, we see that the table occurrence has been added to the graph here. And so that is essentially how we get an add-on into our files. And again, this particular part of the installation is specific to this file, doesn't do anything to your other files. Another thing to note here is the label that I had here is a bit of an extra step as far as additional configuration. I've seen a couple different methods of this being done, and one of them being a pop-up menu that basically just has a longer list of instructions on what you might have to do or what your options are. My add-on just has the one single label that just says go into the script parameters to make sure you configure it properly. And then in the script parameters, I actually tell you what your configuration options are. So here we have the width, the height, the position, the title of the window, the header, footer text, the pen color, and so on and so forth. So that is a very simplistic example, but obviously depending on the complexity of the add-on, you might have more additional setup or more parameters that you need for your add-on. But definitely want to have that considered as you're building your add-on and as you're grouping your objects. That's something that you have to keep in mind because as they drag it onto the layout, that's what's going to be included. So first thing you want to have them see is, hey, how do I use this if I need to do anything extra, rather than having a README or follow along to a video or something like that. But that is essentially our add-ons and how we use an installer to install them and how we use it to modify the metadata so that it'll show up correctly in the add-on, and then how we go ahead and move it over to a file.
I want to say thanks to Kristian Olsen and Art Savea for doing a great job on this add-on module live stream. This wraps up part 2 of 2 parts, and so that's all the material we have. Down in the description, you should find the download link, which will be a bit.ly link, a short link that you can copy and paste. And I think there are 2 different bit.ly links, but understand I'm shooting this video and I haven't put the links together, so it might be 1 link or 3 links, I don't know. Just look for the download links in the description. If you have questions about this content, you need help with your own add-on modules, you want to learn more about it, you need some assistance or some coaching, then feel free to reach out to us at support@rcconsulting.com. That goes to the tech support team, and I actually also read a lot of those messages myself and answer a lot of those messages, so I will see those comments. And if you want my attention specifically, make sure to say attention Richard Carlton in the subject. That way the tech support team knows that they should save it and make sure that I see it. So with that, thank you for watching. I'll catch you tomorrow.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected, the quarterback. Great read. good patience, more importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, again he makes the grab.